When's the last time you besought him? See, how on God's green earth do you ever get the God that made the whole world to hear you and to respond to you when you're in a desperate situation? How do you do that? There's a way. And when you learn that way, you'll save your life, and you'll save your children's life, and you'll save other people's lives. There was a fellow years ago that knew my dad who was desperate because his daughter was dying. Well, there was a fellow in the Bible the same way. That's daughter was dying. And whether you know it or not, the Lord has the answer for you, church. He has the answer for you. Looking at me, you ought to know he has an answer. I'm just telling you, every day he heals me more and more and more, and I get stronger and stronger. And I'm just going to tell you, I know that the prophecies that have been given to me, I know that, but I don't live by prophecies. My daddy taught me a long time ago just to pray that God will bring, if that's God's will for my life, pray and put it on a shelf and pray that God will bring that prophecy to pass. So, but I do know one thing. I don't care who says it. I don't care if it was my father, which he'd never say this, but I am overcome by the word of my testimony. And I will always go back to what my testimony is. How my dad prayed and stood in the gap for me. How from desperate situations the Lord has brought me out. I'll always, nobody could ever make me stop giving my testimony. Nobody. I don't care who prophesied to me. Because I'm not looking at the past, but I am going to always give my testimony. Because that's the greatest thing in the world. And I've got about 50 of them, so, I'm telling you. But if, just like it said, if you're like this fella and you're desperate for God to for you to find favor with God, how many wants to find favor with God? Mark chapter 5, verse 22, and behold, there cometh one of the rulers of the synagogue, Jairus by name. And when he saw him, he fell at his feet. Now let me teach you something right here. Anything that you ever see a human being doing to Jesus when he was ministering on earth in person, you can do. You can do it. You can get the same results by doing the same thing now by faith. God is a faith God. And by grace, you're saved through faith. By the mercy of God, through faith, you're healed. But you've got to treat your body right. You have to. The hardest thing has been for me to drink all this fluid, like 70 ounces a day. For me, you go from not being able to drink but 4 cups a day to 70 ounces a day. That's enough to blow your mind. But I'm seeing how it works. So you have to take care of your body. And you might say, but Zona, Jesus was there in person. Well, it doesn't matter. You can do the same thing by faith today. You can. The devil had never raised anybody from the dead. If you see a demon-possessed person that's demon-possessed by the devil, then we can be God-possessed too. By God. And the thing is, you can't sit there in your seat and be full of pride and expect to get something from God. You got to be real. You got to be touchable. I don't care how big your church is. The only reason this church is not any bigger, well, you know the kind of name we've got in this town. Cast out devils, lay hands on the sick and they shall recover. You know, that's the only reason our church is not any bigger than it is because we don't tickle ears here. And we don't try to chum up and do politics just because somebody gives a big tithe. I go after the person that doesn't even give any money. Why? Because I want to see them in church. I want to see them get fed. There are no people. You don't waste your time on people. There's no such thing as that. See, God likes you to come publicly to Him. He likes to watch you walk down an aisle and bow down on your knees before Him at the altar. God likes to see that. It's very important that you do that because He says, like my dad says over and over and over, why do you keep referring to what your dad says? Because it works. I wouldn't be alive today had I not been mentored by him and Brother Hagin. I would not be alive today. I'd be deader than a doornail. See, He likes to put His arms around you at this altar and love you like you've never been loved in all of your life. Nobody can take that place in your life, what Jesus can do. Jesus knows the real you. See, now notice after Jairus fell at Jesus' feet, he believed Jesus would help him. Look at what he says in verse 23. And besought him greatly, saying, my little daughter lieth at the point of death. I pray thee, come and lay thy hand on her, that she may be healed, and she shall live. If you were God, what would you do? I do the same thing Jesus did. If I was Jesus and I was walking along like this and some man came up to me and he said, my little girl lies at the point of death. Please come and lay your hands on her. Please come and lay your hands on her, and she will live and not die. I think I'd listen. See, I don't know all about God because there's so much to know, but I know a lot about Him. And I'm telling you that I have never seen Him turn anybody away who did anything like that. Never. Not one time have I ever seen Jesus turn anybody away. He didn't turn me away when my dad prayed for me. As a matter of fact, He didn't turn me away so much, even though I had denounced Him and said, I will never serve you another day in my life. You took my mama away from me, and then that other thing that happened. Two major things happened to me. Got on drugs and drinking and hard as you think you've seen hard people, you probably never have seen anybody as hard as I was for those 3.5 years. I mean, you could talk to me and it was like talking to a wall. No reaction whatsoever. My dad would come up to me and he would hug me and I'd just stand there like this. He'd say, I love you, Zona, and I'd just stand there. And I'd look at him and I said, where are you going today? You going to New York? You going to California? You going to St. Louis? Where are you going? Kansas City? Boy, I bet it makes you feel funny to know you're going around helping all these other young people, but you can't even do anything for your own daughter. I said, go on to everybody else. I was so hard because I did not think not one soul in this world loved me. I didn't think anybody did. I worked so hard. I worked 2 jobs, and I just continuously worked. I think one year I had off maybe 3 days the whole year. I just worked. Sometimes I'd work, and you're not supposed to do this, but I would work 3 straight shifts. But I was on speed, so I could do it. I mean, I worked 3 straight shifts. Cletus Benton thought I was the best worker he'd ever seen in his life. He didn't know I was doing drugs. But it was. And I was killing myself. But what happened, my dad stood in the gap. No matter how mean I was, no matter what, the Lord spoke to him and he said, the thing that you want the most in the world is never going to happen. She's gone too far. She can't come back to me on her own. There's no way. When she comes in at 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning, you tell her you love her, and you tell her I love her, and then you shut up and you don't say nothing else. Because she does not believe that anybody loves her. And I didn't. And the reason I didn't, my dad was so hurt when my mother left that he was absorbed in his businesses and his salesmen, and then he got absorbed in helping with Brother Little Phil. Totally absorbed. And my life just passed me by. I was by myself all the time. The more he did ministry and the more he did business, the more I hated everybody. And I'd look at him and I said, can I just have one day, just one day? One day. Will you just dedicate one day to me? Then the phone would ring. And the older I got, the more I hated and hated and hated and hated and hated. Then, my dad said, what is God going to have to do to bring you back to me? I said, well, he'll have to knock me in the head because I ain't never serving Jesus again. Ever. I mean, can you imagine what a father felt? I never cursed my dad. I never did anything like that. But I was just angry. So he stood in the gap, and then one day God sent an angel into my room as big as 2 men. And I never took it scared me so bad that I never took any more drugs and never did anything else. I didn't go back to the Lord right then. It was another year before I went back to the Lord. But I slept with the light on for a year. I said, my dad said, well, I believe if you don't live right, he'll come back and he'll bring all of his brothers and sisters with him. And I said, no, I don't want him coming back. He's too big. I want a little one with wings. See, God has his own way of doing things, church. In the Old Testament, a man's hand wrote some words on a king's palace wall during a party, and everybody went, oh. They were in awe. See, God did what he said he was going to do.